time for a quick spin tonight, and we'll go with Agnes Harrison Lincoln and her portrait of a young woman. The artists of the Mystic Art Colony were part of a movement at the turn of the 20th century away from centers of wealth and culture in major cities. Remember that the French Revolution brought in its wake the Reign of Terror. This shook the capitals of Western Europe, and from Russia to Great Britain, it brought dynasties to their knees. It was the end of the Age of Enlightenment. Bye-bye, René Descartes. So long, I think, therefore I am. Artists, thinkers, philosophers were looking to local traditions and lore for wisdom and for inspiration, rather than seeking these in universal ideals or eternal truths. The artists, for instance, from Paris traveled to the forest of Fontainebleau. They went to the village of Barbizon. They sought enduring subject matter in the lives of the rural peasants. American artists had a double challenge. They needed to establish their credentials on the world stage in the aftermath of the bloody Civil War. They also sought a uniquely American art. Clearly, the time for imitating European models was over. So we understand a bit about what they were seeking, but what did they leave behind? Well, many people would say they left their careers behind. Remember that this practice of studio art was predicated on studies at the École des Beaux-Arts, the official art schools. These, in turn, were part of a larger hierarchy of the academies, the pinnacles of learning and culture. If you could survive the course of studies at an École des Beaux-Arts, and sometime we can have a long laugh over a glass of wine over how rigorous that was, then you aspired to be elected to the academy. Famously, in 1799, J.M.W. Turner was considered a prodigy for getting elected to the National Academy of Arts in London as an associate academician. That was at the age of 24. At the age of 27, he finally managed to be elected as a full academician. Still, this was prodigious. Now compare that with a course of rigorous study today. How long would you say that it takes to be a doctor? How did all of this competition, how did this hierarchy function? Well, every year the academies put on a salon. They mounted what we would call today a juried exhibition, and they gave prizes. To be rejected from the salon, you could lose your career. To gain a prize in the salon, that could launch your career. Your highest aspiration would be to gain a prize for history painting, some magnificent episode from antiquity or Greek mythology. The prize money helped a lot, but the fame, the prestige, that's what brought you commissions, and that's what brought you royal appointments, if you were a man. If you were a woman, you were pretty much out of luck. Women were not allowed to study the undraped model in the École des Beaux-Arts. Therefore, they were, as artists, they were relegated to the lesser subjects, remember everything is ranked, of still life, flowers, and portraiture. Famously, I laugh every time I think of this, although it was a tragic instance. Famously, Thomas Akins was fired from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts for allowing a woman in his life drawing class. Little wonder that thinking people and artists got tired of this in the aftermath of the reign of terror. Who has time? Who has patience for this? Well, fine, understood, but how are you going to earn a living? Born in Minnesota in 1870, as we ponder that question, Agnes Harrison she came to fruition as an artist right in this cusp of art history, right at this divergence in the pathways that artists were taking to fame and success. She must have been bold. By the time she was 20, she had moved by herself to Boston in order to study with the famous American Impressionist J. Alden Weir. She got married, she had her only child, and 2 years later, she moved back to Minnesota, a single parent. She was committed to her career as an artist, and she loved her subject of choice. She loved flowers, she loved faces, she loved still life, and she utterly rejected the Academy's disdain for her cherished subject matters. She gained recognition in the Twin Cities, and as her career flourished, she moved as far east as Connecticut and as far west as Wisconsin, where she died in 1954 at the age of 84. This is a woman who beat the odds. What can we see when we look at her painting? What can it tell us of her life and her strengths? This is a portrait of her niece, whom she painted several times. She was very close to her. What do we see? We can observe a face, a beautiful young face, and we can observe the flowers, vibrant, around her. Perhaps most important in the context of this talk, what do we not see when we look at this painting? Well, 4 things principally. We do not see the illusionistic representation of 3-dimensional space that is the basis of neoclassical painting. Not here. We also do not see the typical proportions of a portrait painting. This canvas is very nearly square. We also do not see the setting for this person. We do not have any information that was supposed to tell us how, in however coded a manner, who she is or why she's important. And lastly, we do not see the typical pyramid composition with a face at the top dominating the rest of this canvas. There's too much going on here. All of this is antithetical to the canon of neoclassical painting. But what can we see freshly ourselves if we just look at the painting instead of reading it in order to find out what it can tell us? Very often, artists in their studios struggle to find fresh ways to look at the paintings they've been laboring on. And many times, they'll simply turn them upside down to change the frame of reference. Let's try that and see what this shows us. I just love doing this. I just love doing this. I think it's because I love paint so much as the representation, you have to love the paint. Anyway, when I turn it upside down, when I looked at it upside down the first time, it was immediately obvious to me that the innovation here is not in subject matter. Forget French peasants in the village of Barbizon. This is about change and motion and rhythm. We see innovations here when we turn it upside down that don't read in the narrative of the poem, of the painting. And I want to point some of these out to you. The thickness, the layered, the loving texturing of the face is quite at odds with the evaporative painting in areas surrounding her. In some places, the canvas is just exposed. We also see, at a glance, how important these flowers are. These aren't decorations. This isn't a frame. These are figures in the painting. These are part of what she's saying to us. We also see this hinge, this axis down her shoulder, around her head, and to the top of the painting, around which the flowers turn to encircle her, almost as an embrace. You see that in places the flowers practically impinge on the figure itself. We also see the rhyming of shapes. The rhyming of shapes. What do I mean by this? Look at the shapes of her lips and the petals of the amaryllis, the shape of her hair. Look at the shapes in the print on her dress and the patterns around her neckline. These notes float around her. They set up a rhythm. They set up resonance. We also see, when we turn this upside down, some very unconventional colors in the shadows on her face. There's blue beneath her lip and green against her neck. These marry more with the flowers than the way we think of a figure. We also see, and this is so enchanting to me, I think what I see the most when I turn this upside down, what hit me the most strongly are her lips. Her lips and the amaryllis next to her. And we become aware that this is neither a child nor yet a woman. This is a person arriving at a moment just before maturity, a moment in her life as fleeting as a cut flower. Look at the beautiful repetition of arches that establish such a solid form. Look at the way her dress falls off her shoulder, and look at the richness of those lips. I can't help thinking how much Agnes, the single mother who committed to a career as an artist, loved this young woman. Let us remember Agnes, who chose a career in the arts, and let us congratulate her and celebrate just what it took for her to succeed against the odds and against the conventions on her own terms as an artist. Thank you.